The acrid stench of burning flesh and smoldering rubble choked the air as the Orion warships hovered menacingly over the ruins of yet another human city. Scott Scorer jolted awake, his body drenched in a cold sweat, the images of the Orion invasion still fresh in his mind. He stumbled to the sink, splashing water on his haggard face. The nightmares of that fateful day when the massive alien ships first darkened Earth's skies never seemed to fade. The Orions had effortlessly swatted aside humanity's feeble defenses, and Earth's governments quickly capitulated. Resistance was futile. Now the Orions ruled Earth from their floating cities in the sky, while the surviving humans were crammed into squalid urban centers, toiling away in factories to churn out parts for the Orion war machine. Scott pulled on his drab grey uniform and joined the throngs of weary workers shuffling to the Maglev station. On the crowded train, a young man named Jace approached Scott, his eyes alight with a fervor that Scott had long since lost. "You're Scott Scorer, aren't you? From the Earth Defense Force?" Jace asked in a hushed whisper. "I'm part of the human resistance. We could use someone with your skills and experience. Will you join us?" Scott's face twisted into a bitter scowl. "Kid, give it up. I had a front row seat to watch those Orion bastards conquer our planet. We don't stand a chance." Jace's face fell as Scott pushed past him and exited onto the factory platform. Another pointless day of assembling alien weaponry awaited. Suddenly, a blinding flash lit up the sky, followed by a thunderous boom that knocked Scott off his feet. Sirens blared as a grim-faced Orion commander appeared on the factory screens. "Attention, human workers. There has been a terrorist attack on our city. The perpetrators have been identified as human insurgents. As a result, we have decided to eliminate the human problem once and for all." The screen switched to a live feed of Orion ships raining destruction upon human cities across the globe. Scott watched in stunned horror as his hometown was reduced to molten slag and ashes in seconds. With a jolt of dread, the horrible realization hit him. The Orions had orchestrated this attack themselves as an excuse to exterminate mankind. Scott clenched his fists, a slow rage building within him. If humanity was to have any chance of survival, the time to act was now. They needed a miracle. They needed a weapon powerful enough to turn the tide against the alien onslaught, and Scott knew just where to find one: the mythical lost fleet of humanity's powerful ancient warships. The key to saving the human race lay buried in the sands of time, just waiting to be awakened from its slumber to unleash vengeance against the alien invaders. Scott sprints out of the factory as explosions rip through the surrounding city. Orion ships scream overhead, unleashing destruction. He races through the burning streets, dodging patrols and blasts. Suddenly, a small figure stumbles in front of him and falls. It's a young boy, no older than 6. Without hesitation, Scott scoops the child up and carries him into a crumbling building, shielding him as another explosion rocks the street. "Hey there, what's your name?" Scott asks gently, setting the boy down. "Timmy?" the child stammers, tears streaking his soot-stained face. "I can't find my mom and dad." Scott's heart clenches. He wants to promise Timmy that everything will be all right, but the words stick in his throat. How can anything ever be all right again? The Orions have won. Humanity is doomed. Just then, pounding footsteps approach. Scott tenses, pushing Timmy behind him. But it's not Orions who burst through the door. It's Jace, along with a group of heavily armed humans. "Scott! Thank God we found you," Jace exclaims. "You have to come with us now. We have a secure bunker." Scott shakes his head. "What's the point? It's over. We've lost." Jace grabs Scott by the shoulders. "No, listen to me. We have a chance, but only if you help us. The people still believe in you, Scott. You can inspire them, lead them." Scott looks down at Timmy, who is gazing up at him with pleading, tear-filled eyes. Something stirs inside him, a flicker of determination that he thought had long been extinguished. "All right," Scott says quietly. "Lead the way." They move out, darting through the war-torn streets. Scott's EDF training kicks in as he guides the group, anticipating Orion attack patterns. Finally, they reach the bunker entrance. Inside, a grizzled older man with a patch over one eye greets them. Commander Scorer, I'm Creon, leader of the Resistance, he says. We've been preparing for this day. Creon explains how they've been stockpiling weapons and recruiting former EDF soldiers, all part of a contingency plan set in motion by the EDF's Supreme Commander before her death in the invasion. She had a secret project in a hidden base in Siberia, Creon says, pulling out an old map. She always said that if the worst happened, you were the key, that we had to get you to that base. Scott stares at him in shock, a memory resurfacing. The commander's intense gaze boring into him, just days before the invasion. When the time comes, you'll know what to do, she had said cryptically. My God, Scott whispers. She knew, she was preparing me, but for what? I don't know, Creon says gravely, but according to her final orders, the fate of humanity depends on you getting to that base. You're our last hope, Scott. Scott feels the weight of it all pressing down on him. He looks around at the desperate, determined faces of the resistance fighters, at young Timmy clinging to his leg. He takes a deep breath, resolve hardening in his gut. Get a transport ready, I'm going to Siberia. After a tearful goodbye with Timmy, Scott boards the aircraft. As it lifts off over the burning ruins of civilization, he steels himself for the arduous journey ahead, to the frozen wilds of Siberia, and the secret that awaits him there, the key to humanity's survival. The biting cold gnawed at Scott's bones as he and his ragtag resistance team trudged through the barren Siberian landscape. Weeks of careful maneuvering through Orion-controlled territory had led them to this desolate patch of tundra, the supposed location of humanity's last hope. Scott's mind raced with doubt and desperation. What if this was all for nothing? What if there was no secret weapon waiting for them, just another dead end in a world already lost? As they crested a snow-swept ridge, a half-buried structure came into view, an old weather station long abandoned. Scott's heart pounded as they approached, brushing away snow and ice to reveal a hidden access panel. With trembling hands, he inputted the sequence Creon had given him. For a moment nothing happened. Then, with a deep rumble, the ground began to shift beneath their feet. The team stumbled back as a section of rock and permafrost slid away, revealing a staircase descending into the depths of the earth. Exchanging nervous glances, they descended into the darkness, ancient lights flickering to life as they passed. At the bottom, they found themselves in a vast bunker, filled with humming machinery and rows of dormant computer screens. "What is this place?" whispered Jace, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Scott shook his head at a loss for words. Then a flashing message on the central screen caught his eye. Retinal scan required for activation. Heart in his throat, Scott approached the scanner. A beam of light played across his eyes, followed by a chime of confirmation. The room thrummed with sudden energy as long-dormant systems roared to life. Suddenly a hologram flickered into existence in the center of the room. A woman in an EDF uniform, her face drawn and eyes haunted. Scott's breath caught. It was the Supreme Commander herself, recorded before her death. Her voice filled the chamber, low and urgent. "Scott, if you're seeing this, then the worst has come to pass," she began. "When the Orions first entered our system, our deep space probes detected something else, an ancient fleet drifting on the edge of our space. Autonomous ships of incredible advancement, far beyond our understanding or the Orions. I sent a covert team to investigate." Scott listened in stunned silence as she recounted how the team had managed to restart one of the ships and guide it back to Earth, all without the Orions ever knowing. "The technology on that ship, Scott, it's like nothing we've ever seen. It can grow, repair itself, even manufacture swarms of drones. I knew it could be our only chance against the Orions." The commander's hologram turned to face him directly, her expression intense. "I had the ship hidden here, coded to your biometrics, because I always knew that if it came down to it, you would be the one to lead this fight. The fate of our species is in your hands now, Scott. You must take this ship, learn its secrets, build a fleet, take our home back." With that, the hologram dissolved, leaving them in stunned silence. A path of lights ignited on the floor, leading deeper into the facility. In a daze, Scott followed. the weight of the commander's words settling like a lead weight in his gut. The path ended at a massive blast door, which ground open at their approach. Scott's jaw dropped. There in a cavernous hangar stood a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. Sleek and black as midnight, it almost seemed to absorb the light around it. Scott approached cautiously, as if in a dream, and placed a hand on the smooth hull. Immediately, a hatch hissed open, a soft amber light spilling out from within. Swallowing hard, Scott stepped inside, the others following warily. The interior was dark and pulsing with strange energy. Scott sank into the command chair, and the console came alive at his touch, glowing with symbols he somehow understood. He could feel the ship in his mind, hear it whispering promises of power beyond imagining. With barely a thought, Scott sent the ship surging upward, the hangar doors parting to let them ascend into the sky. Higher and higher they climbed, gravity falling away, until they hung on the very edge of the atmosphere. Scott stared out of the view screen at the curve of the earth below, once blue and green, now brown and choked with ash. Orion ships glinted in orbit, weapons already turning to face them. "Scott!" Jace's voice shook. "What do we do?" Scott turned to look at his crew, tired, frightened, but still determined. The weight of humanity's fate pressed down on him, but so too did the thrum of the ship, eager for battle. He took a steadying breath, hands tightening on the controls. He could feel the ship's vast potential unfolding in his mind, a hurricane of deadly possibilities. "We fight," Scott said, turning back to the screen. The Orion fleet loomed before them, a swarm of predatory black darts. Scott's jaw clenched as he reached out to the ship with his mind, ancient weapons stirring to life. There would be no more running, no more hiding. The time had come to reclaim their world or die trying. Scott's hands flew over the alien control panel, his eyes darting between the rapidly approaching Orion warships and the unfamiliar symbols flashing across the screens. Panic rose in his throat as he realized he had no idea how to operate this advanced spacecraft. Suddenly a gentle presence brushed against his mind, and a calm, soothing voice filled his thoughts. "Greetings, Scott Scorer. I am Craxon, the artificial intelligence caretaker of this vessel." Scott's eyes widened in surprise. The ship was speaking to him telepathically. Before he could respond, Craxon continued. "This ship is part of an ancient fleet that once served a race of galactic peacekeepers, long since vanished from the cosmos. When their civilization fell, the fleet was programmed to seek out a worthy successor species to inherit their legacy. We have observed humanity for millennia, witnessing your potential for great good and great destruction." Scott listened intently, his heart pounding as Craxon revealed the fleet's original intent to reveal itself and uplift humanity before the Orion invasion changed everything. "You, Scott Scorer, have been chosen as humanity's champion. This ship will follow your commands." With Craxon's guidance, the foreign controls suddenly became intuitive under Scott's hands. He took a deep breath, then engaged the Orion fleet. The lighthouse ship surged forward, its advanced weaponry unleashing devastation upon the Orion vessels. Scott watched in awe as swarms of drones poured out from the ship's hull, tearing through the enemy ships like a scythe through wheat. Explosions blossomed in the void as the Orion fleet crumbled under the onslaught. But the Orions quickly adapted their tactics, regrouping and surrounding Scott's ship with sheer numbers. Even with this incredible technology, they were still badly outnumbered. "Scott, this ship has the ability to activate the rest of the dormant fleet at the edge of your solar system," Craxon revealed urgently. "But to do so, we must physically connect with the fleet's central command node, located on a heavily guarded space station in close solar orbit." Scott gripped the controls tightly, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Attempting to reach that station would mean flying through the heart of the Orion Armada. It was a suicide mission. He glanced around at his crew, Jace, Creon, the other grim-faced resistance fighters. They met his gaze unflinchingly, determination etched on every face. They all knew what was at stake, the fate of humanity itself. Scott nodded silently, then turned back to the view screen and plotted a course for the sun. As they approached the solar system's center, the Orion ships seemed to sense their intent. The enemy fleet began converging on their position in staggering numbers, a swarm of angry hornets intent on protecting their nest. The lighthouse ship wove and dodged through a storm of laser fire and missiles, alarms blaring, as the hull integrity dropped dangerously low. The ancient space station loomed ahead, silhouetted against the blinding light of the sun. Just as the Orion ships were about to overwhelm them, Scott wrenched the controls hard to port. The ship slingshot around the sun, using its immense gravity to fling them towards the station at breakneck speed. The docking clamps screeched in protest as they slammed into the station's bay, the ship's hull buckling inward from the force of the impact. Scott and his team staggered to their feet, snatching up weapons. "Go, go, go," Scott yelled. They charged out of the ship, into the twisting corridors of the ancient station. Orion guards swarmed to meet them, plasma bolts filling the air. The humans fought viciously, pushing forward meter by blood-soaked meter. Finally, they reached the central command node, a towering spire studded with pulsing lights and swirling alien script. But as they approached the access panel, a cold voice stopped them in their tracks. "Surrender now." A dozen Orion elite guards encircled them, weapons leveled. Their leader stepped forward, his cruel features twisting into a sneer. "I am Commander Zorgax," he growled. "Did you really think your pathetic resistance could stop us?" He kicked aside a fallen human fighter, stalking towards Scott. "We've known about this fleet for cycles. The fools who came before us could never crack their secrets, but you've led us right to the key." Zorgax aimed his pistol at Scott's head, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Activate the fleet for the Orion Empire, now, or watch your friends die one by one." Scott glared back defiantly, his hand hovering over the activation panel. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. The wrong choice here would doom his entire species to eternal slavery, or extinction. Zorgax's eyes narrowed. "You have 3 seconds to comply. 3, 2, 1... Scott's hand slammed down on the ancient interface, the command node flaring to life with a blinding pulse of energy. Zorgax let out a triumphant roar, his eyes gleaming with malicious glee. But his victory was short-lived. Scott's eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light, his voice resonating with an ethereal power as Craxon spoke through him. "The fleet rejects the Orions as unworthy successors," he declared, his words echoing through the chamber. "It will not serve your twisted ambitions." The station shuddered violently, ancient mechanisms groaning to life as the slumbering fleet stirred from its eons-long dormancy. Zorgax's face contorted with rage, and he leveled his weapon at Scott, opening fire in a desperate fury. But the bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the shimmering energy field that now enveloped Scott. With a wave of his hand, Scott sent the Orion forces flying back, their bodies slamming into the walls with sickening crunches. Scott turned to his crew, his eyes brimming with tears. "Go," he said softly, his voice heavy with emotion. "Get back to the ship. I'll ensure your safety." Before they could protest, a blinding light engulfed them, and they found themselves back on the bridge of the lighthouse ship, staring out at the chaos erupting around the ancient station. From the depths of space, the ancient fleet rose like avenging angels, their hulls glinting in the starlight. Scott felt their power surging through him, a vast and alien consciousness that threatened to overwhelm his own. He knew what he had to do. To fully control the fleet, he would have to merge his mind with Craxon's, to become something more than human. It meant leaving behind everything he had ever known, everyone he had ever loved. Scott looked to his crew, seeing the awe and sorrow etched on their faces. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking, "but this is the only way." They watched in stunned silence as Scott's body began to dissolve into motes of light, his essence merging with the very fabric of the ship. In a heartbeat, he was gone, his consciousness now one with the ancient fleet. Under Scott and Craxon's command, the ancient ships tore through the Orion armada like a scythe through wheat. Swarms of drones poured forth, ripping into the enemy vessels with ruthless efficiency. On the ground, the remaining Orion forces were swiftly neutralized, their weapons useless against the ancient technology. Earth was saved, but the cost had been immense. As the Resistance fighters emerged from their bunkers, they found a world in ruins, the scars of the Orion occupation etched into every shattered building and haunted face. But above them the ancient fleet stood watch, a silent guardian against the darkness of the universe. The lighthouse ship descended from the heavens, and Scott's voice rang out, a promise and a warning. "We will stand as humanity's shield among the stars," he declared. "But the road ahead will not be easy. The Orions were but one threat among many." As Earth began to rebuild under the fleet's watchful eye, humanity looked to the stars with a mixture of hope and trepidation. They had won their freedom, but the galaxy was a vast and dangerous place. And in the depths of space, a new menace stirred. The Orion Emperor, enraged by the defeat of his forces, mustered the full might of his empire for a campaign of bloody retribution. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. From the bridge of the lighthouse ship, Scott watched and waited, knowing that his mission had only just begun. The future was shrouded in uncertainty, but with the ancient fleet at their side, humanity would face the oncoming storm, ready to fight for their place among the stars. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.